One of the biggest mistakes I make in my life time and time again is comparing myself to others. It's something that we all do, but rarely is it ever useful, especially when it comes to money. This comparison game oftentimes puts unnecessary pressure on ourselves, making us unhappy. And that's why I reviewed this video from Nischa. She's a finance expert.
Through being in some form of finance-related environment for over 13 years, 3 years studying finance, and then a further 9 years working in banking, one of the key skills I've learned is how to spot the signs that contribute to financial success.
Who made a wonderful video breaking down the psychology behind the comparison game we play with money.
And when you do this, it sets you free from comparison. It sets you free from expectations. It gives you the freedom from not having to play the game where other people are making the rules.
Her YouTube channel has been exploding, and in this video, she talks about some statistics that will help you understand where you are financially.
Once you wrap your head around that, you will realize you're doing far better than you think you are financially.
But I reviewed this video because I think she missed something. A lot of the statistics she uses are based around the averages. And when I look at other videos on this topic, everyone uses the averages. If you're taking the time to watch this video, you aren't looking to be average, and neither am I. So I'm going to break this video down based on statistics you won't find anywhere else, so you can finally determine if you can stop worrying about money. But first, you have to fix your psychology. Let's dive in.
One of the main reasons people tend to feel behind financially is because they are playing the status game where we're all trying to one-up each other. The status game is an external ranking to everyone else. The size of your home, the brand of your shoes, and everything else that you can see and compare yourself to on social media. The issue is that when you start playing this game and comparing internally with everyone else's projections, you're constantly going to feel on edge because someone else has to lose for someone else to be able to win.
When you're playing the wrong game, it's impossible to win. In World War II, what allowed the Germans to get an upper hand was a military attack known as the Blitzkrieg. They concentrated military forces into narrow offensive attacks that would overwhelm the enemy and catch them off guard. In most cases, the opposing force would surrender because the force felt unstoppable and overwhelming. And that's because they were trying to face it head on. They were playing the wrong game. That's until Dwight D. Eisenhower changed the game. The Allied troops stopped trying to face the Blitzkrieg head on and allowed it to work at the Battle of the Bulge. On the surface, it looked like the Allied troops were losing, but because the Germans had expended so many forces attacking, they left their flanks completely exposed. The Allied troops then attacked the Germans from the rear, completely surrounding them, allowing them to win the battle. Eisenhower viewed the situation differently than everyone else because he changed the game that the Allied troops were playing. The status game feels like a blitzkrieg on your finances. Just when you saved up some money, you buy a new car or a new house to keep up with everyone else. It feels overwhelming, and eventually you'll have to surrender unless you do what Eisenhower did and change the game. So what game should you be playing?
That leads me to the second game you can play, which is the wealth game. This isn't about what everyone else can see, but instead it's about what's going on behind the scenes. It's the money in the bank that is being invested into assets. It's the business that you're trying to build on the side. It's the money that you're spending on self-development. It's all the things that have a positive ROI and that can ultimately buy you freedom and buy you the power to live life on your own terms.
You have to start playing the wealth game. As Nischa mentioned, the wealth game involves spending your money on assets, businesses, and self-development. The goal is to enable your money to work for you instead of you working for it, creating true wealth. When you do this, you begin to view your finances differently than everyone else. While everyone else is trying to face the status game head on, you'll be attacking it from the flanks. And even though at first it may look like you're losing because on the surface you aren't trying to buy the nicest car or the biggest house, over time you'll win because you have money working for you while you sleep. But to play this game, you need to set a benchmark for what wealth is.
If you found out you earn more money than your friends or your colleagues, you might feel slightly more content with your earnings, but that feeling would fade pretty quickly. But on the other hand, if you found out you're earning less money than them, that would have a way bigger impact on your happiness levels, and you'd feel a lot less satisfied with how much you're making. We can be outperforming 99% of the people around us, but if there's even one person in our circle who appears to be doing better, it can make us question our own success. And the worst part is, without knowing, this psychologically will keep us in a never-ending cycle of discontent. And as we rise through the ranks and make more money and level up, so to speak, so does our peer group and the benchmark we compare ourselves to.
So once again, playing the status game is a dead-end game that you will eventually surrender to. Two ways to begin to play the wealth game is to learn where you stand in terms of your net worth and income to society as a whole. And in most YouTube videos, this is where people begin to talk about the averages. And in fact, this is what Nischa does in this video. But like I said, I'm not looking to be average and you shouldn't be either. So I'm gonna set the benchmark for wealth and income at the top 10% of Americans by age category to give you the clearest target possible. Let's start with net worth. Net worth is a basic calculation of taking all your invested assets, including the equity in your home, and subtracting any debt you have. If you find yourself in these categories, then take a deep breath and relax, because you're crushing it. Stop worrying about your neighbor who has the nice car or the bigger house, because you have no clue where they stand on this chart. The second benchmark you should be paying attention to is income. Just like Nischa said, it's easy to feel bad about ourselves when we find out that the people around us are making more. But if you find yourself in the top 10% of income earners for your age, then once again, take a deep breath and pat yourself on the back. You're on the right path. Now, just because you're in the top 10% doesn't mean you should stop saving money or fighting to earn more. But if you start comparing yourself to these numbers rather than comparing yourself to the material things people have, then you're playing the wealth game. If you aren't in the top 10% in these categories yet, but you want to be, then the best place to start is to learn about the 3 fundamentals of money.
Number 1, the first of the 3 fundamentals is to be fully aware of your relationship with money. This means knowing your financial health, your income, and your expenses, and then finding ways to live below your means. In other words, increase your income and or reduce your outgoings so that you have enough money left over to save or invest in some form of another.
But what amount of money should you be saving and investing? This entirely depends on how much you have already saved and how close you are to retirement. But a general rule of thumb is to save and invest at least 15% of your income for retirement. Just 9% of middle income workers do this.
That leads me to the second fundamental, which is having an emergency buffer. This is a specific amount of savings you would have access to in the case of an emergency, and having this one thing alone sets you way ahead of a lot of the population. If you have a healthy emergency fund tucked away, even just 1 month of living expenses to start with, you're doing a lot better than most people.
So once again, she talks about the average. Yes, having a 1-month emergency fund is a good place to start, but in my opinion, to be above average, you need to have 6 months of expenses set aside strictly for emergencies. Only 27% of Americans have the ability to cover 6 months of expenses.
And then the final part of these 3 is far easier said than done, especially in the current climate, and that is to have manageable debt. This isn't just about using debt to buy things you don't need. It also means not finding yourself in a position where debt is the only way you can pay your bills on time.
Simply put, you shouldn't have credit card debt, ever. If you do, it needs paid off immediately. Once you have it paid off, the way to determine whether you have a manageable amount of debt is simply this. You can make your minimum monthly payments on normal debts like your car, home, and student loans. You can save and invest 15% of your income for retirement, and you can do both 1 and 2 without having to go back into credit card debt. Only 39% of Americans can say they have 0 credit card debt. If you're able to change the game from status to wealth, be in the top 10% of net worth and income earners for your age, and follow the 3 fundamentals of money, then you're richer than you think.
And when you do this, it sets you free from comparison. It sets you free from expectations. It gives you the freedom from not having to play the game where other people are making the rules.
But accomplishing these things is harder said than done. Just ask Caleb Hammer, a YouTuber who tries to repair his guests' horrible financial situations for free. And recently, I watched all of his interviews to break down the common issues his guests had with money. So check out this video next if you want to learn what not to do with your money.